Georg, Greve and Hans will talk to us about Kolab 3.1.
Hello, hello. Okay, this works. Actually, yeah, I prefer to stand. Sitting feels weird. All right, so welcome everyone. Pop, pop, pop. 1, 2, 3. Okay. So welcome to the Kolab Groupware workshop. We had to move this slightly ahead from the initial schedule. So this is actually what was planned to be a workshop format, which is what we're going to do. Since I unfortunately have to leave a little bit earlier than I, ideally would have. Since tomorrow afternoon I'll be heading out back home. Since on Sunday it's my boy's birthday, so I have private obligations which I hope you'll forgive me for. Louder, okay. So it's one of the mics that you actually have to almost hold to your chin. So we will do a workshop session on the Kolab Groupware Solution, trying to give you an idea, A, what is Kolab Groupware, what have we done, the 3 technology base, tell you a little bit about the 3.1 release, what is coming now, and we actually thought we'd be daring and bold and just show you how easy it is to get Kolab onto OpenSuSE. So Hans who is one of our community members as well as a business generator around OpenSuSE and Kolab, has volunteered to do this with me. Initially, we would have loved to also have Andreas Geisler here, who should get all the credit for the packaging, in fact. Next time, we will bring him. Absolutely, we will find a way. But like this, he's now been very, very busy making sure that the packages are smoothly going towards 3.1 now. So 3.1 should become available very soon, I understand.
Question of days.
In days, essentially, on OpenSuSE. So this is a 3.0 install, but the 3.1 install will be exactly the same thing. Because there's no major differences. I mean, it's a pure feature release, which means, just more good stuff, but no dramatic changes. So Hans, you want to unplug me here for a second, and then show off the... Yeah, ideally we'd have a switch box. Unfortunately, we don't. So, and this whole format is intentionally. I would like it to have it a bit more interactive, if we can. So, if you have any questions at any point in time, if you're wondering about something, just raise your hand. Let's not do this a pure frontal assault matter.
Good morning. Actually, I want to talk you through what I already have been doing on this install. Actually, not that much. The only thing I actually tested was, would it be possible to add the repositories that Enes so kindly provided. Actually, I will be following mostly the steps outlined in Aeneas' blog post on the kolab.org community site. Obviously, this is, as Georg mentioned, 3.0, not 3.1 yet, which looks, by the way, really exciting. Enes is in the process of packaging 3.1, but let's not tempt fate too much and do a 3.0. Actually, what I did was grab a clean 12.3 live KDE release and install it on a VirtualBox. Then I added the repositories, and really I didn't do anything else. So here we go. We have zipper install Kolab, which will of course now result in a flawless installation. And actually, while I'm doing this, waiting for this, I'm actually hoping that it will start to install fast, which is always a little bit tempting on virtual machines, but we'll see how this works. Anybody here actually done the install of Kolab already, right? Everybody, of course, or nobody? You did, yeah, of course. All right, cool. Actually, as you see now, Zipper has run through the dependency check and has concluded that it needs only 178 new packages to install. which obviously gives Georg the chance to enlighten us a bit more about the 3.1 install. I am going to press yes and enter and have all the faith in the world that this will end up in a workable basic installation, which we will demo further. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, I know that some people actually came here not even quite knowing what Kolab fully is. So I've just pulled up a slide from a presentation that Thorsten Grote, our evangelist, gave, I think, in Spain at some point. So just very briefly, Kolab is a groupware solution. That means it comes with server and client. And it does what groupware commonly does, so email, calendar, address book, tasks, and since 3.1 now also files. It has multiple clients for all sorts of platforms. It pushes to the mobile device on any common platform through ActiveSync. It has full offline capabilities. It is extremely scalable. I will show you a bit of the server-side architecture in a moment. And it is 100% free software. And this is a very important part for us. We are a 100% open source free software business. We do not have any proprietary extensions, any proprietary modules, any neo-proprietary business models, no open core of any kind. Our business model is very similar to what Red Hat and SUSE also do. It is essentially a certified binary stream that comes from our build servers that we maintain for our customers, where customers then have the chance to get a 5-year stable support cycle, which we will then support, and when they have issues, we will resolve them for them and all the services around that. It is, to the largest extent, an open standards-based solution as well. And that means including all the way down to the storage layer. So the storage layer, you will see, is based on a set of open standards, the most basic one being IMAP, because Kolab uses an IMAP server as its load-bearing database. So all the contacts, all the calendars, all the tasks, even all the files, if you want, end up on an IMAP server, which you can practically scale to any size of deployment. As I learned, this is actually not totally unlike what Groupwise has done in its basic fundamental design, only that when Groupwise was done, there was no email. So they just have a file-based store on the disk. Through IMAP, we effectively have the same thing, only in IMAP format, which means IMAP clients have a very easy way of accessing the system. And those IMAP stored objects then are essentially small emails with an XML attachment. That XML attachment is an XCal, XCard format. So you actually have an open standard all the way down to the storage layer. So all you need to do if you ever wanted to migrate out of it, or if you want to process that information in any other way, is actually be able to handle XCal, XCard. That's all you need to do.
Maybe
and
to do a little bit
you are
installation in between.
All right. Let me just finish the last point, and then you get the beamer back. And the last part that is important to understand about Kolab is it's a very security-centric architecture. The background of Kolab is with the German Office for Information Security. It's part of the Ministry of the Interior, which required a groupware solution back in the early 2000s and couldn't find anything that would fit its criteria, including being 100% open source. So they did want something that they could audit all the way down and that would give them a multi-platform capability. They couldn't find anything in the market, so they launched a tender. A consortium of companies won that tender and then developed Kolab for the BSI initially, which is where it is still being used until today. But since everything was developed as free software, it was then also taken further by those companies until we started Kolab Systems a few years ago. But before that, there was also a set of companies working around the project, as well as volunteers from all over the place. So it has a background in the security field, in the public sector, but has evolved out of that.
Thank you. I thought it might be fun to give a little insight in what might console is actually doing at the moment. So I'm making this to do something. Yeah, that seems to work. Actually, installing Kolab in previous versions was actually a bit daunting. The implementation originally done by the consortium Georg just mentioned made use of a lot of open source components, standard mail server and PHP, or maybe not PHP at that time because the web front end is new. But actually what they decided to do was, in previous versions, they wrap around a lot of functionality around the standard packages. So actually, basically, an installation of Kolab would look like I'm installing everything from scratch. Okay, and now I'm going to redo the installation with all the Kolab patches attached. Which basically was like RPM masochism for advanced people. In Kolab 3, what they excellently did was seek connection to upstream. A lot of patches have been given back upstream for a lot of projects. And they incorporated also a web client called Roundcube, which basically started as a different project, but I think they've pretty much assimilated it. Or at least carry on installation. Well, as you can see, a lot of standard modules are now installed. Perl, Python, MEFSD. It also has virus checking out of the box installed. So actually, since the installation phase, it's now at like 30 from 178 packages. Actually, everything just has been downloaded. It's now installing. I'm going to give back the microphone to Georg.
Thank you. So what I have here on the screen for you is a ugly yet hopefully somewhat functional diagram of how a Kolab server looks like, where server means like the conceptual thing of a server, because there can be quite a few machines actually involved in this whole thing. The gray box here is purely optional in the end, but what you see is it is built around a Cyrus IMAP by default. We can also use Dovecot. Those are the two options that are working for quite a few users. You have all the database, effectively, all the email, all the actual load in here, which means from a backup and restore perspective, if you back that up, you have all your payload. And that is always single files, which means it is very easy to back up and restore. So we can do things like you pull that one calendar entry from 3 years ago that was accidentally deleted out of a backup, you throw it back in, you regenerate the index on Cyrus, and suddenly you have that calendar entry back in your actual original location in the calendar. So you don't need, like many others, to set up a second system where you restore it all and then somehow pull out of the database whatever object you were interested in. You can actually just pick the one object you require. Yes, exactly. So, I mean, because essentially, when it comes to IMAP servers, it's now either Cyrus or Dovecot at the moment. I mean, those are the two actual options. We have a default for Cyrus because we find that in a lot of enterprises, and it has a very wide support community. So we are involved in the Cyrus IMAP project ourselves. In fact, the architect of the Kolab Groupware Solution, Jeroen van Meuven, is also the Cyrus release manager. So we have a intimate relationship there and contribute to the project, but we also have a good relationship to Timo and the Dovecot project. So that's a pure preference of technology, if you will, that we leave up to the users. Both servers obviously scale up to any number of users and any amount of data that you require. I mean, terabytes, hundreds of thousands of users is not a problem. You can do this in different ways with Cyrus. I know you can do it in different ways with Dovecot as well. So from a system architecture perspective, it really doesn't matter. All that the IMAP server needs to do is it needs to support the IMAP standard and the metadata RFC, because the metadata RFC is what we use to store the information on the folders that says this is a calendar folder, this is an address book. So in that case, the clients then know not to display that to the user and show it as a calendar or an address book instead. That's all it requires. It's very simple, really, but I think simplicity is good for these kind of systems. Then you have typically postfix. I mean, I think it's the default MTA. In the Kolab stack, you have the Kolab daemon, which actually listens to the directory server, which is typically LDAP based. We use a lot of 389, so the Red Hat directory server. Open LDAP works as well. Many other options exist just as well. So you can, by now, hook this into any directory server that you might have. We have even natively run this against Active Directory, just for the hell of it. We've gotten rid of all the schema extensions that Kolab 2 had, and can now just run Kolab against virtually whatever you have. So it's fully integratable into any pre-existing environment, which in the enterprise is important, right? Because no one wants to exchange their directory service because they're introducing another group deployment. That's not really what you want to do. Then, of course, spam filtering stack is the usual, I would say. I mean, it's kind of nothing new here. What is important to understand is that every one of these boxes represents one or more servers, effectively. So typically, the community installs are made so that it's easy to install it all on one server, so it can also all be on one box. But you can essentially take every piece of this and put it onto a server or cluster, including with redundancy, including across data centers. Because all of these components talk to each other through secure network protocols, which means you have a scalability where you can actually scale at the bottleneck. You can say, all right, I now see I have too much load on the IMAP, so I need more IMAP capacity, or I see that my spam filtering stack is the problem, so I throw it more in there. Or what's common is actually also web servers taking up some power depending on how many concurrent sessions I have. So I have the web servers running the Roundcube web interface, or Roundcube-based web interface, I should say. We've been working with, contributing to the Roundcube community since its 0.7 release. Two of the main authors of Roundcube actually work for Kolab Systems and do this as their day job. So 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, and 1.0 were all massively based on work that we did with Kolab Systems, but we give everything back. And Thomas Brüderli, who is the architect, initial author of Roundcube, is the guy who makes the call whether or not this goes into Roundcube proper or into a Kolab repository where some of the other modules live, also 100% free software. But he says Roundcube, in his vision, was also always a web mailer. He didn't want it to be more complex than that, so it's his call for the project. I don't have any say in that, nor does anyone else. It's purely the Roundcube project managing itself. So we have not assimilated them. That's very important for me, because we try to do right by the community. We're all from the community. I mean, if you know my background, you know that I grew up in the community as well. So we actually try to do this right. We take pains in doing so. Then we have an ActiveSync stack, Synchrotron, which we, by the way, co-developed together with the Tyne 2.0 people. So it's two free software groupwares working together to solve the ActiveSync problem and say, let's get a proper stack in here that actually works well. So that's what we use there. It's also running in the web server. And now for 3.1, you can imagine another third box, which is FAWA, the web access for file store that also does the web dev. It does CalDev and CardDev as well to expose the entire dev suite to the client. So that way you can actually scale all of this over web servers. And that gray box here, I mean, one, you have the MySQL for the caching of the ActiveSync metadata, so you know what has been pushed to the mobile phone or not. For some Roundcube configuration data, and otherwise purely for purposes of looking at improving the performance in terms of requests, just pure caching. And it's also used, of course, by the dev layer then as well. But the SQL server can, in theory, die, and you will never lose any productive data. You will lose a few user settings if you've stored them in there, which is the default, but that's about it. I mean, you know, maybe the user loses their predefined skin reference that they made in the web client. That's about it. Because everything else will be rebuilt from here. Because the data is here. And in the directory server, of course, which is where the authentication is. So it's a fairly simple design, but powerful, and allows us to actually have installations with hundreds of thousands of users, and but also scale down, by the way, which we think is cute. We have one community member who's actually brought the Kolab server onto Raspberry Pi, which I think is funny. I mean, the practical value is perhaps limited because a web server on a Raspberry Pi probably doesn't have the performance to really serve a lot of users, but the fact that you can do it is kind of cool.
All right, thanks. I'm going to switch over here and pray that my KDE will detect a monitor again, which will, of course, work beautifully in a few seconds. Yes, it does. All right, as you can see here, we have installed package 178 out of 178 packages, which is very nice, the Kolab 3.0 release. Actually, there has been some RPM output, mostly regarding optional features of like MDB2, so don't get scared if you see that. MDB2 is a PHP database package with a lot of plugins, a lot of optionals. You don't need actually that much because the actual driver, like you can see here, is already installed. All right, according to the manual, and people who know me will absolutely know that I always follow manuals. It says Kolab-pre-setup. All right, since I've installed everything, I'm just going to do that and see what happens. Actually, it seems to be doing something. First of all, installing certificates on a private server. Personally, in a lot of intranet situations, I have absolutely not taken the effort of doing that. But actually, the basic install of Kolab is actually checking on that. And also, the default setting is actually to have encrypted traffic between all components. So, do we want to run Kolab cert now? Yes, of course we do. Here we go. Supply a passphrase. I'm going to use the easily rememberable Kolab 123. Let's see if it accepts that. It does. Well, as you can see, a private key is being generated right now, or at least I see a lot of dots. It requests a country name. We're in Greece, but I feel more comfortable with my home country, Netherlands. Haha. State or province name. Well, let's go for my home state. City. Shameless plug. Voorburg in the Netherlands is very nice, authentic little place. You should really go there. It has nice seafood, just like Thessaloniki. Organizational name. Well, let's also plug it there. Here we go. Organizational unit name. Oh dear, my organization has units. Computer name or common name. Well, let's put my name there since I'm pretty fond of that. Email address, not necessary. So here we go. Second key is being generated. As you notice, the information, the questions are pretty much self-explanatory. I'm pretty sure everybody will find their way. Enter a new passphrase. Enter it again. And enter a new passphrase, apparently. All right. Here we go again. Country name. As you can see, normally you have to do all this crap manually with running scripts and stuff, so this is actually pretty helpful.
Well, I mean, you'll recognize it as the SSL certificate stuff that go with it, right?
As you can see, I'm already taking shortcuts. I'm going to be really consistent in using this password, which will probably prevent me forgetting it. All right, now certificate has been created and it's being signed for a default of 1 year. It's actually good to keep this in mind if you run your own server and start wondering after a year why nothing works anymore. It might be because of the certificate. All right, commit the thing. Actually, it's now setting up a default configuration in postfix. Very nice as well. Cyrus is being updated with an access control list, also being updated with the certificates. Apparently, it has decided that I did not configure the hostname right, which I'm pretty sure I did, but all right, let's run Yoast2. Here you can obviously see the SUSE integration, which is done by the community packaging, because I rather am guessing that CentOS would not run Yoast2 LAN. As you can see, or at least as I can see, it is showing some activity in firing up Yoast. Oh, apparently it chose to do the Qt version. Why not? Any questions so far? I mean, seem to be having time, so. No, everybody thrilled and enthusiastic that this is working so nice? Good. Let's keep it that way. Maybe you have something to add in between?
Well, yeah, on the conceptual level, since we were there just before, one of the very nice side effects of storing everything in IMAP is that for all the ACLs and sharing mechanisms, you can rely on the entire power of IMAP ACLs. It also means, by the way, that there is no de-escalation of privileges in the web front ends. So anything that runs in the web server runs with the credentials of the user that is now doing the operation, which is obviously the only session you can ever hijack. So there is no de-escalation there. There is no escalated privileges in the web server ever. And we did that very much on purpose. So relying on the ACLs of the IMAP servers is, in fact, the strongest choice you can make in our experience. And being able to configure all the ACLs on all the object types in the exact same way is quite nice, especially once you combine it with LDAP groups, where you set group ACLs in the IMAP server to say someone who is in that group has access to that folder. So once you move that person in and out of that group, they gain or lose access. So IMAP ACLs are extremely powerful and allow a granularity all the way down to this person can write into that folder, but they cannot read from that folder. So even like one-way sharing operations where you can drop data into a box where you don't have access to it yourself later, all these kinds of scenarios are possible to implement with that, and they work consistently over all data types.
Thank you. Welcome back. As you can see, there actually is a host name and a domain name. So I'm just going to click OK. And wait for this to carry on. All right, now it's going to create an SQL database. Actually, it's asking for the root password here just because of the configuration. It's not going to store the root password anywhere. And to be quite sure, I actually think I did not set a root password for this MySQL instance yet. So let's just do that one bit. And carry on. Then this is perhaps a tricky bit of the installation because I don't think the MySQL server is started yet. Let's find that out. Actually, this is also pretty much explanatory, but if you do this first time, it might be a bit daunting. Maybe if you have anything to show in the meanwhile, you can show while I set this up and then we carry on.
Sure. I mean, I have some screenshots here for those who are curious how this actually looks.
Let's do some eye candy then.
Yes, let's have some eye candy. So you see this is the web interface, obviously. So this is Roundcube webmail. If you've seen the latest version, very similar. Just skinning job ultimately. Other than that, it's stock. What you get with Roundcube, this is the compose dialog. You have the calendar. This is one of the Kolab components. So you have a very nice, this is the month view. You have a day view and an agenda view as well. So you have your standard views. So the calendar interface has a couple of very nice tweaks, such as you see a search box in the background there, upper right. I can enter any string in there and it will do a search across all my calendar events that it sees, and then narrow down what it displays in any of the views with that search string. So if I say, no, I was looking for this, how many events do I have with person X? I just type that name in there, hit return, and suddenly I see only the events with person X. Which is a very easy and intuitive way to actually filter on the display, and you suddenly only see that part. Then, you know, the whole thing of event creation, you see that there. You have obviously the standard things. You have the summary. You have ability to set alarms.
Where is the indexing being done for this kind of search?
That's actually Roundcube itself doing that. I mean, or the web client itself doing that. All of that, I mean, the web client, for obvious reasons, is a live client. It's not an offline client. So it directly works against the IMAP server. The only thing that it does is use SQL for caching, but that's about it. Otherwise, it has no other store of that information. You want to continue?
At least I should be able to.
All right.
Yeah.
Go for it.
All right, cool. Welcome back. I've just set a root password for the MySQL server and started it up. And of course, entering that with an interfering dialog is a recipe for success. So I'm going to do that again. All right, here we go. It's now going to install postfix, as you can see. It's also installing ClamAV, which is a very nice feature for those of you who try to integrate postfix with ClamAV before. This is also setting up automatically, saves you a lot of time.
So what is important to understand here is actually these are all components that are already in OpenSuSE essentially, right? Except for, you know, a little bit of the Kolab daemon, you know, the calendar interface and so on and so forth, but the rest of it is already all there. It's just about pulling in the right components and configuring them. And the way in which Kolab has been set up, in particular since Kolab 3, is that every one of these individual components retains their full option value. So, I mean, what this is essentially trying to make it easy for someone who just tries to get a single server up and running to run them through the steps. But of course, you can do all of this by hand, including in distributed setups and so on and so forth. And then we use Puppet to configure the systems, Cobbler for the system management, these kind of things. So you can go as complex as you want. I mean, you can make it very, very complex if you want to. However, we try to make a simple community install possible, so people can just say, you know, I want Kolab setup, and it does everything for you. You don't really need to know a lot about the individual components. This is exactly what we're showing here.
And since all the components are actually mostly the vanilla components by upstream, you can also integrate it into an existing situation quite easy. The installation script I'm following right now, I have actually also used in an existing installation with a running mail server and not Kolab running on top of that, and it actually left it intact. It just added the options Kolab needed, and it did not disrupt anything else, which is by no means a guarantee for success. So if any of you tried this at home and the server crashed, burned, or eat your puppy, that's not my fault, but I managed to do it. So. As you can see, we're still downloading some ClamAV stuff, and indeed, these all actually come from the standard OpenSuSE repositories. Yep.
And on the vanilla aspect of it all, there is one patch that is not required for it to work. But if you want a particular function, you need it, which is a patch against PHP to add VLV search on LDAP. Because the Roundcube address book is perhaps the most powerful LDAP address book out there on a web client. I haven't seen anything like it. I mean, VLV, so paginated, you know, virtual list view searches on the entire thing. Yes, I've seen it. You can actually use LDAP directories of hundreds of thousands of entries this way fast in the web client, which is nice. That is a patch we're currently in the process of upstreaming with the PHP community, but you know how it is. You develop something, it takes a moment until it reaches the upstream. That is the only patch, and it's only required if you require VLV. Other than that, it's plain vanilla all the way.
Absolutely true. For some reason, ClamAV is deciding to eat up a lot of resources in rebuilding its database. So if you have some more eye candy, then feel free.
Yeah, just
to.
Since we're running out of time, let me just take a little bit of a speed tour here. Since this is new in 3.1, this is the file interface in Roundcube. So all nicely integrated. Actually, you have dialogues. Let me just see whether I can bring one up for you like that. Need more hands. Yeah, I know. Dup, dup, dup. 1 second. Do we have... I will just do this the fast way. This is the task module, by the way, which is largely GTD based. So you just hack in a new task up there. You can drag and drop it to tag it, to sort it, and so on and so forth. Synchronizes to the iPhone, synchronizes to whatever you have. This is the agenda view. Let me just see. I'm looking for one particular thing. Unfortunately, I don't find it because what you have with 3.1 now is in the mail view. You can actually do things like attach file from cloud, save the attachments of this email into the cloud without them actually ever being downloaded. So you can, in fact, do these things very nicely, transparently with the dialogues, and those dialogues from the file interface can be imported also into any other web application. And the whole backend of the FAWA module is written in a way that is very easy to attach any sort of backend store. So if you wanted to hook up your own cloud instance, no problem. If you want to hook up your Samba, share, your whatever object store, it doesn't really matter. There's all sorts of ways in easily hooking this up. There's a clean API. You just write a couple of calls, and that store is integrated. Authentication through LDAP is, of course, vastly preferred there. But then that's about it. You want to show? OK.
All right. I've actually went through the Kolab pre-setup phase. Actually, how much time do we have?
5 minutes left. So
5 minutes. Cool. We have Kolab set up here, and I'm going to ignore the thing here. Actually, the Kolab pre-setup is pretty much OpenSuSE specific here. We are now entering the completely vanilla Kolab install. I'm going to do the Kolab 123 password again. Actually, what we did before was actually setting up the infrastructure, and now we're configuring the applications themselves. This is a lot of repetitive input. As you can see, we are configuring the LDAP administrator here, and also the directory manager user. All right. We need to use a system user. As Georg previously explained, everything is run by its own user, and also the login is done by the IMAP user. Setup procedure plans to check for the following domain space. This is actually very handy because it integrates in your actual domain. Pretty much you can simply follow the defaults here, especially since this is a demo who will not send mail. I will simply click on everything. It's a shame we do not have a nice wizard, which I can do next, but still.
Yep. And the other thing that I wanted to highlight, since we're in a technical group here, yes, we're almost done, is that Kolab, the server side, has an API based on a Python stack that is running on the server, which gives you a command line to do administration of the server, but it also exposes through the web a JSON-based, so RESTful, if you will, interface to add a domain, add a user, delete a user, these kind of standard tasks, so you can easily script this It is meant for multi-domain setup, so hosted scenarios, if you will, and then allows any sort of admin panel or admin interface that you have to easily integrate into that. On the data level, it is extremely easy to integrate into Kolab, not just through CalDev, CardDev, and so on and so forth. It's perhaps even easier in some way to use the libkolab and libkolab XML. Libkolab XML writes the XML files, as you can perhaps guess. It is generated code, so it's from a schema description of the actual standard. It is generated, and that allows us to generate it for any platform, and it is then wrapped in the libkolab, which provides you with an API to read and write Kolab objects natively. And that is, through multiple language bindings available from C, C++, Python, PHP, and so on and so forth. So it's one stack that does this task that makes it extremely easy for you. All you need is the libkolab, and you need to have some form of IMAP library to do the IMAP handshakes, and you have native Kolab integration into any application you want. And then through the network, you can access the calendar, the address book, whatever. It becomes extremely easy to integrate on a data level as well as on the administrative level through the JSON interface to make sure that you actually have easy ways to hook in. The JSON interface is also what the web admin panel uses, which is what is coming up here now. That one builds itself. It's purely modular. All it does is through the API. There's no secret sauce here. It's highly modular, so you can actually extend this in any way that you choose. And it works, again, with the credentials of whoever is actually in that, here, is logged into it. And thus, if you say don't have the permissions to add a certain thing, then you don't get the option to do so. It gets the permission de-escalation, again, is done on the back end, so the interface on the server itself, not in the web front end. So that's a very important part of the way in which we design these things. We don't trust web technologies. I mean, they're nice and useful and you want them, but there's also always a way to break them. So we don't trust them enough that we say, they should ever hold more information than they absolutely must do in order to do their job properly. All right. And then finally, as my last point, we don't exist just on the web. We also have a desktop client. As I said, I mean, you can obviously hook up Thunderbird and others, but we have one that we develop. And let me just, for the hell of it, show it on Windows, which is Contact. KDE PIM has been developed through and from and by Kolab for a very long time, and is obviously the KDE PIM application. Again, everything in the upstream, everything with the upstream, always. As you can see, it actually looks very native on Windows. Surprisingly native, actually, which is thanks to the power of Qt, which is the technology that powers it. Yes, so we have this client on Windows, we have it on Linux, any distribution that you want virtually. In principle, we can also bring it onto Mac, but most Mac users prefer to use the built-in applications, which is why CalDev, CardDev were so important, which we've just added with the 3.1 release. So if there's big demand for it, of course, we'll do it. But right now, most people seem to prefer to go the native route there. But yes, so this gives you a full PIM suite that is able to go mano a mano with Outlook and actually can replace it, which is nice. And it has multi-server support always built in, full offline capability, crypto capabilities, and so on and so forth. So it has a very, very powerful set. And following the rough start in the KDE 4 era, it is now maturing very fast.
Actually, since we are running out of time here, I'm pretty much going to leave it at that. Actually, what I just did was do the whole command line stuff. What it results in is actually pretty much a basic installation without any user. Might anybody be interested in finishing off this demo in a Birds of a Feather session, perhaps? Because I'm more than willing to do that. Is there interest for that? Don't shout at all at once. All right. I'm going to submit it as a BAF session then and finish it up then because we are out of time apparently.
Well, I mean, this was initially a 2-hour session, so
Yeah.
it got a bit squeezed. We would have liked to go more into details, but perhaps you've at least gotten a quick overview of what Kolab is, what the conceptual aspects are that make it interesting, how you could actually get involved. In fact, the most important URL to remember is git.kolab.org, as well as git.kolabsys.com for some packaging repos. And of course, kolab.org as the website. You'll find all the information there. If you have other questions, there's mailing lists and so on and so forth. We are still around. We'd be happy about anyone who wants to contribute in any way, shape, or form, or just use it. Also, if you have a project that handles any form of PIM data, so address books, calendars, anything like it, native integration on the data level would actually be very interesting because we would like to hook this into as many different projects as possible to make it easy for data exchange to happen, because that is where the user really gains value. Any final words from you?
Thank you very much for this opportunity and for your company producing the fine software.
Well, thank you for being here. Yes, we'll be around. So in any case, I hope it was at least a little bit interesting. I know it was a bit squished as a session, but I hope you'll forgive me. Anyway, all right. Thank you very much.